I've called today's lecture Teaching Literacy, and I've chosen that title because although it's focused on the teaching of reading, I'm trying to show the students how reading and writing are mutually beneficial, how one impacts positively on the other. Good morning everyone, and welcome to this session which aims to revise some key messages from the English course and to explore in some detail the simple view of reading. I want to start with reading because it's really important that you understand the process of reading. Literacy is central to the primary curriculum. The primary curriculum is predicated on children's ability to read, write, speak and listen. So we need to be very clear about what reading is. And this quote from the Cox report is very helpful. It says, "Reading is much more than the decoding of black marks upon the page. It's a quest for meaning and one that requires the reader to be an active participant." Bit of a mouthful, so I might say reading is an active process of getting meaning from print. Reading is always a message-getting activity. There are two aspects in the reading process. Decoding, word recognition, those high-frequency words, and the comprehension of what's been read. So I'm going to demonstrate these two aspects with this passage, and I want you to read this passage to the person next to you.
It must be fairly obvious to anyone reading this that readers draw their knowledge of how language works, their ability to recognise words on sight, and their capacity to use contextual clues to enable them to make sense of what has gone before and predict what is coming next.
It must be fairly obvious to anyone reading this that readers draw on their knowledge of how language works, their ability to recognise words on sight, and their capacity.
So you can see that all the time, as fluent, skilled readers, you're reading for sense, you're reading for meaning. That's exactly what you want to be teaching the children in your class to do. Every time they read, they're searching for the meaning that the author intended. So when we think about these two aspects of the reading process, we express them as an equation. And we express the equation in multiplication terms. We use multiplication because the product of multiplication is always greater than the sum of addition. So if we look at decoding with no comprehension and you multiply those together, there's nothing, there's zero. Similarly, if there's no decoding but comprehension and you multiply those together, there's nothing, there's zero. There's only reading when decoding, the word recognition, the high-frequency words, the phonic knowledge is multiplied with the comprehension to make reading the product of that process. So we're moving on now to think about the simple view of reading. On your whiteboards, I want you to write the two dimensions of the simple view of reading. Please don't show your whiteboards till I give you the signal. Everybody ready? You have to be quick. 3, 2, 1, show me. Excellent. Anna, can you tell us what you've got on your board?
I've got language comprehension and word recognition.
Who else has got language comprehension and word recognition? Show me with thumbs up. Excellent, well done. Clean your boards, please. And it's the Rose Review that gave us this model of reading and the wording of the model of reading, the simple view of reading. This model has two axes. First axis is about word recognition, decoding children's phonic ability. The second axis is about language comprehension. we see 4 different types of readers mapped on to this model. And Mandy, Sarah, Jo and Sarah are now going to make a human version of the simple view of reading. Where's your ribbon? There we go. Do you need to come this way slightly, I think? You're all right, Sarah. Okay, so now we've got a human version of the simple view of reading. We're going to now listen to 4 case studies. I want you to listen very carefully to these case studies. I want you to imagine that these are children in your class in September, because I want you to map these case studies onto the simple view of reading. I've got Joy, Julia, Tim and Susie. Listen carefully and assess these learners.
My teacher says that I struggle to read even simple texts. And my teacher says that I don't seem able to discuss the books I've read, or answer questions about stories I've heard, or talk much about things that have happened to me.
Thank you, Joy. Here's Julia's case study.
My teacher says I read slowly, and I don't always get it right. But my teacher also says that I enjoy discussing stories and that I'm really good at remembering all the details of what's being read to me, and that I'm really, really good at remembering what I've seen on TV and everything that happens in our class.
Thanks, Julia. Here's Tim's case study.
My teacher says that I can read accurately and quite fluently, and I have a good knowledge of high-frequency words. But he also says that sometimes I'm not able to remember what I've read or what's been read to me. He says I don't understand a lot of the detail of the stories he reads to the class.
Thank you, Tim. Here's Susie's case study.
My teacher says I read a lot from the reading scheme and from my favourite Dick Smith books. My teacher also says that I can talk in a formed way about what I've read. I really like books. And that I play a full part in class discussions about books and literature. And I can build on what other children say.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to ask Emma to come and put Joy in the right place in this model of the simple view of reading. Keep watching to check that Emma puts Joy in the correct quadrant.
Into this one, I think, just with the 4-word recognition.
Thank you. And now Vicky is going to move Julia and put Julia into the correct quadrant. Thanks, Vicky. Lisa, can you come and move Tim to the right place? And of course, what you'd say to your class is, keep watching, keep checking. Do you agree? You might even say, show me with thumbs up if you agree, show me with thumbs down if you disagree. And Sandra, can you put Susie in the correct place? And you might think, well, it's obvious, isn't it? But you need to keep thinking, is Susie going to go to the vacant quadrant? Okay, thank you very much. Just to check that we've got our case study learners in the correct quadrant of the simple view of reading. I want you to keep these learners in mind while we carry on through this lecture. Keep thinking about how you're going to move Joy and Julia and Tim across to the quadrant of good language comprehension and good word recognition. And also, how are you going to maintain and develop Susie's enthusiasm and reading skill? Thank you all very much. Thank you to my volunteers. You can take your hats off now. The next part of the lecture includes a game show, a literacy game show. I use a lot of quizzes with students, and I think it's important that the students see that they could use that approach, not a test or an examination, but a quiz which taps into children's competitive instincts, gets them working together in a collaborative way to answer the questions that the teacher sets. There's the opportunity there to tap into popular culture, maybe to base the game show on something that's popular from TV, for example, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. That sort of format will always work well with children in the classroom. And now we've got a quiz. We've got a literacy game show. And I need an assistant. Here's Susie, who's going to be my glamorous assistant. And the topic for the 3 rounds of this game show is the context in which you'll teach reading. So here we go with round 1. Round 1 is about shared reading. Shared reading, A, is a small group activity. B, shared reading involves an adult and a child reading together. C, shared reading is a whole class activity. Or D, shared reading is reading with a partner. Okay. And Neil?
It's C, a whole class reading activity.
Do you agree with Neil? Yes. Thank you, Neil. Every time you see the word shared applied to reading and to writing, it means you as a teacher working with the whole class. Okay, round 2 might be slightly harder. Round 2 about guided reading. A, guided reading involves children reading one section each in turn around the group. B is a whole class activity. C involves the children reading together in unison, like chanting. Or D involves children reading independently at their own pace. And who's going to answer round 2? Emma.
D, children reading independently at their own pace.
Thanks very much. And our final round, round 3, also about guided reading. Guided reading is taught in A, friendship groups, B, mixed ability groups, C, same ability groups, or D, same gender groups. Looking for Yvonne will answer round C.
It's C, same ability groups.
Yvonne, why is that?
It's so that they can learn from each other and access the text together.
Thank you very much. Really important in guided reading that the children are more or less at the same level, so you can choose a text that's appropriate for them at their level, that your teaching hits the mark for the children in that group. It's much more time effective if you teach children together in a group. As Yvonne says, they learn from each other and you as their teacher. Thank you very much. That's the end of the game show. So just think about the model for teaching literacy where those contexts for teaching will occur. What we want is that first-hand experience, that reading, talking and doing at the start of your teaching, so that the children are involved before you move into modelling and demonstrating through shared reading and shared writing, where you'll do teacher scribing and supported composition when you're teaching writing. Then you need that supported, scaffolded stage. And all that leads in to children working independently.